Morning everyone. Well, it's that time of the year again when we're approaching Christmas, but this one's going to be a little bit different because we are now looking at the release of Windows Server 2025. Now, there's been quite a few feature changes with Windows Server 2025. None that I consider are massively major apart from the GUI interface. We get a more Windows 11-y-like feel to Windows Server 2025 at the moment. We get a few performance upgrades. We get, for example, some new memory access for ADDS. That means that Active Directory and your domain controllers can now support 64 cores, which is pretty bananas for the amount of power that you have available there for Active Directory domain controllers. There's more integration with Azure ARC, but I think one of the biggest changes that you're actually going to see is the ability now to do pay-as-you-go licensing with Windows Server. What that means is that instead of having to go and buy a retail license for a standard or a data center edition of Windows Server 2025, we can install it locally into our environment and actually hook it to our Azure subscriptions via Azure ARC and actually have the cost of the Windows Server 2025 OS billed on a pay-as-you-go basis to our Azure subscriptions. So let's go and take a quick look at that in the documentation. So if I bounce over here to the Windows Server 2025 kind of get started guide, there's a section here for Windows Server pay-as-you-go. And it says configure Windows Server pay-as-you-go with ARC. All we have to actually do now to get this pay-as-you-go installed is, if we scroll all the way down to the setup, during the installation of the Windows Server 2025 OS, you can choose pay-as-you-go. This option will be available on the choose licensing method screen. Okay, that's cool. So we'll give that a shot and we'll see what we can actually do with this. But before I actually go through and do this installation, there is something to bear in mind if you are planning on doing a Windows Server 2025 pay-as-you-go. And it's this kind of section down here in the notes. This one, it doesn't necessarily worry me as such, but over here, this kind of means you're going to have to watch it a little bit. So it says, if you shut down or deprovision your device, i.e. just get rid of your local virtual machine, without disabling pay-as-you-go, billing will continue. The beatings will continue. So I guess that does actually mean that you could actually completely destroy one of your local machines, but still be paying for the license of the operating system if you don't actually go and get rid of it in Azure. So let's go and take a look at how that kind of works as well when we install one of these operating systems and how to actually disable one of those. So let's start off with the installation. Over here on my computer, I have Hyper-V. Let's just go and create a new virtual machine here that we're going to use for Windows Server 2025. Let's just call this Win25 Demo. Okay, we'll leave everything on the defaults there. I will need Generation 2 because I'm going to need this as UEFI based. So it'll actually support that virtual TPM chip for all this to actually work. Startup memory, 4096 meg, that'll be fine. This is just a demo installation. We're not going to do anything with it. And we'll connect it to my default switch so it does have internet access. We'll leave the virtual hard disk there as Win25 demo, that's fine too. And we'll install an operating system from a bootable image. Now, just to bounce back to that documentation very quickly, Windows Server pay-as-you-go is only available if installed from a retail copy of Windows Server 2025. Pay-as-you-go isn't available in preview, eval, or volume license versions. Now, it's the evaluation that a lot of people are going to be using because you can download Windows Server 2025, the ISO or the virtual hard drive, for free to have a bit of a play around with it. But this is not going to be able to then be converted to pay-as-you-go. You're going to need to go and grab an actual retail copy of this to be able to do it. So my installation here, if I go to browse, this is actually a retail copy ISO. So hopefully this is all going to work quite nicely for us. Where did I get that retail copy ISO from? Well, if you're a normal business, you can go and grab one from your partners. But for me, I have an MSDN subscription because of the teaching and training I do. So that's nicely built. Let's go and hit start on that one, and we'll go and connect to that virtual machine. I have to remember to mash the any key. I appear to have missed it, so I'll need to restart that again. Let's just go to action, let's go to reset. I'll need to click in and mash the any key really quickly. There we go, got it. That's a little weird with the Hyper-V. I wish there was like a tick box there that says, you know, tick box do any key when you go and start a machine. That'd be much more useful. But either way, it's Hyper-V, so you have to click in with the left mouse and mash the space bar or whatever your preferred any key is. So language settings will stick with United States English because that's the only option I've got. It doesn't matter how many times we tell them that color has a U in it, and it's aluminium, not aluminum. But either way, let's change this from US to UK keyboard. And let's go next on that one, and I'm going to install Windows Server. Notice this button here, previous version of setup. If you click that, it goes back to the old style wizard here, but it doesn't give you the pay-as-you-go option. Okay, so don't click that button. We're going to install this. I agree that everything will be deleted. Yes, that's fine. And what I want to do is I want to select the option for pay-as-you-go here. With the pay-as-you-go option, you pay for your license on a monthly basis using your Azure subscription. Wonderful. So let's go do that one instead of a product key. Go next on that one. And what we're going to do now is we're going to select Windows Server 2025 Standard Desktop Experience. If you do this one, you'll get the Core Edition. And if you get the Core Edition, it means you've just got a command prompt. We want the desktop experience because that will allow us to install ARC easier. Okay. To be truthfully honest, they used to say that the desktop experience and the core experience, the core is actually going to run faster. It really doesn't make that much difference in my personal opinion. And there's no real difference here in pricing at all between desktop and core edition. So just grab the desktop edition should you need it. So disk 0 unallocated space. Yep, let's just wipe the entire disk. That's fine. And we'll go next on that one as well. Ready to install. And let's begin the installation. So let's just wait for this thing to install. It shouldn't take too long. In the meantime, while that is installing, I'm going to go grab myself a spiffing cup of tea. How are we doing? Okay. Oh, that's good timing. We're just getting a reboot on the go, and our installation should hopefully have finished by now. That's some good tea. Okay, customizing settings. Let's go set a password here. PA. Set my default password, my default super secure password for testing machines. And let's go finish that off. Okay, so let's go log in here. Help if I can get the password right the first time, wouldn't it? And let's go check out Windows Server 2025. Right, send diagnostic data to Microsoft. Yeah, go on then, whatever. They can have some diagnostic data. Try Admin Center and Azure ARC today. And let's get rid of that for the moment. Let's get rid of this for the moment, Server Manager. And let's just take a look. I mean, that's pretty Windows 11, right? I mean, the first thing it's going to do is tell you to get started with Azure ARC. We will need that in a second because we need that to go and set up our pay-as-you-go environment. But let's just take a quick look around here. I mean, I've still got the Windows 11 start stuff. Yeah, that's pretty Windows 11-y. If I go into the terminal, yep, I have a Windows PowerShell terminal. Let's do a $PS version table. I got PowerShell 5.1. And still no PowerShell version 7. That's annoying. So winget. Yep, that's in there. Okay, so let's do winget search PowerShell. And I think it's PowerShell.PowerShell. I'm not too sure. But the search will tell me. Microsoft.PowerShell, sorry. Latest version 7.4. So we're going to need that, definitely. Winget install Microsoft PowerShell, because if we're going to run any PowerShell commands related to Azure, they're all running on PowerShell 7 now. Also, all the commands for running against the Microsoft Graph API, so anything you're doing with Entra ID, that's all going to be PowerShell 7 as well. So yeah, we're going to need to throw that on there definitely for Windows Server 2025. Okay, so more tea while that installs. So let's very quickly pop over to the whiteboard just to give a basic understanding of this. So you've got Azure running up here, right, in the big cloud bubble. And the idea is that you've got on-site services as well. Okay, so we've got on-site over here. And the issue is that we might have stuff that exists in Azure, like for example, virtual machines that are running in Azure, SQL servers and all sorts. But let's just say virtual machines for the moment. And we might have various things like policies actually applying to that Azure infrastructure and to those virtual machines. We might have things like Defender actually applying to those virtual machines as well. I'm running Defender for Cloud to go and scan our servers. And our on-site virtual machines over here are kind of being left behind from this process. We've kind of got the split environment where I'm administering on-site things differently to the way I'm administering Azure things. And what we really want to do, and what Microsoft are pushing nowadays, is they're really pushing out the idea of hybrid. Okay, so the theory behind hybrid is that we can kind of manage our stuff in Azure and manage our stuff on site, really with a single pane of glass, if you excuse the management terminology there. And Azure ARC kind of makes that really easy to do, because all that Azure ARC actually is an agent. It's a little agent that actually sits inside your virtual machines. Now, it can do this for Linux, it can do this for Windows, it's not a problem. You could actually even have a situation where you had something like multiple virtual machines all running on something like Hyper-V, or actually even VMware, and you can drop the agent down here at the hypervisor level. Either way, what happens is this agent actually links back to Azure up here, and it does this via HTTPS connection, so we don't have to do any fancy port forwarding or opening there. If that virtual machine can hit Google, it can hit Azure. And what this will do is essentially create what looks like kind of like a ghost VM up here in Azure. It has to sit inside a resource group. It is an object inside Azure, but what this is, it's a remote control. So all of the things like, for example, logging information can be passed up via this, and we can also pass down control. What we also have the ability to do, interestingly, is if we even have Azure ARC loaded on something like Hyper-V down here, and we have this hooked into Azure, we can actually hit a button here that says deploy a virtual machine inside the Azure portal, but where that virtual machine actually deploys is not inside Azure, it can actually deploy down here locally. So it's kind of a cool piece of software to set up. It's pretty easy to do so. So let's go and get that hooked in so that we can get our pay-as-you-go licensing configured. So let's get started with Azure ARC here, and let's go next on that one. So this is just going to go and throw everything up for me, which is getting the Azure Connected Machine Agent installed on this server. You can go to the Windows web, the Microsoft documentation website, and you can actually just pull that down as an MSI file if you really want as well. It should take a couple of minutes to actually install this. It's not actually very big. All right, so that's nicely installed. Let's go configure on this one, and let's go and get it hooked up. So I'm just going to minimize that PowerShell window again, because we don't need that. It's now going to bug me to go and sign into Azure. So hopefully, as this next finishes, there we go, we can go and sign into our Azure. We can do Azure China, Azure US Government Cloud, or Azure Global. There should be a fourth one there, actually. There should be one for the German Sovereign Cloud as well, but that's not actually existing. I wonder if that's by design or if that's a bit of a bug. So let's go and sign into Azure down here. And this should bounce me up to Azure itself. I'm going to sign in with that data, confirm and continue. Yes, continue without this data. Just give me a web browser, Microsoft. Right, so let's do one of my subscriptions. And let's go and log in here. Whoops, nope. Would help if I could actually type properly. There we go. Update your password. First time you are signing in. It's not the first time I'm signing in, but okay, I can update my password if you want. Okay, that's nicely updated. And let's go and sign this in. Authentication is complete. Great. Let's close that browser tab. All right. The tenant I'm going to use is this one. And I've got two subscriptions, Visual Studio A and B. I'm just going to select the A one. Okay, that's interesting. So over here in the resource groups, I've actually got to go and select an existing resource group. So if I don't have one already, I'm going to have to build that in the portal. I'm just going to put this into the VM demos group. That'll be fine. I think I would have a virtual machine in there. And the region that this is going to be in, this is going to be in UK South. This is a public endpoint. It's connected directly to the internet. It's not going through any proxies. And here is my pay-as-you-go licensing. Pay-as-you-go licensing. To pay for your license on a monthly basis using your Azure subscription, that's fine. So let's go and select that. And that's next on that one. And do pay-as-you-go license activation. And we'll go and wait for this to complete. All right, connection and configuration successful. Finish that, and well, it doesn't seem like there's any difference here, does there? I did a reboot. Azure ARC status is currently connected. It's using the name. This is the default installation name. I didn't actually change that. We are connected to that specific subscription. So if I view that machine in Azure, logging back in with my MicAdmin account, we should find, oh, there it is. Great. Let's go into resource groups, and I have a number of different resource groups here. And let's go back into my VM demos where I deployed it, and you'll just see there it is. It's just this one individual icon. Now, a normal Azure virtual machine is going to have a number of things. It's going to have the virtual machine itself. It's going to have the public IP address, the network security group, the virtual network, the disk, and the network interface, whereas an ARC machine just has this one little link. So you might want to group up your ARC machines into one individual resource group if you want to. And what we can do now is we can kind of see a few things. Okay, so now our server is connected via Azure ARC. We can go and have a look at a couple of things inside here. We can see all of the details of the machine and the default computer name. That's fine. What we can also see is we're now licensed with pay-as-you-go. That's wonderful. Now, you can control a number of things with Azure ARC. Like you can go and absorb things like the logs. You can control the Windows updates from here. But one of the most interesting things, I think, is the way that you can actually do some remote control. So if you come down here and have a look at, where is it? Connect. Now, one of the things that Microsoft kind of added in with Windows Server 2025, well, it wasn't added in 2025, admittedly it was added in a lot longer ago, but they're kind of pushing this a bit more, is SSH. Now, if you look in here inside Server Manager, there is remote SSH access. It's set to enabled. This is set to disabled by default. So if you just drop in here into local server and switch this around from disabled to enabled, what you'll be able to do now is come in here and connect with OpenSSH. So I'm going to use a password, and the username was administrator. And if I go hit connect in browser, this is going to bounce up the Azure Cloud Shell, and it's going to run the AZ command. Now, since this is using an AZ command, and this is using, therefore, the Azure CLI, technically you could kind of use your desktop computer to run Azure CLI to then do an SSH connection into Azure and then back down again to your local on-site servers. That's kind of cool. So this is the password for the local server. And log in, and there we are. We're kind of in. This is just actually running in a normal command prompt. So if I switch that to something more useful and switch it to PowerShell, there we go. We're now in a full PowerShell shell connected via SSH via our web browser. So if I do get-service, this will be all the services that are currently running on my server. But what I'm doing is I'm connecting here from the Azure, whoops, let's make that a bit bigger. I'm connecting here inside the Azure portal and running an SSH connection through that HTTPS tunnel directly down to this agent and down to this virtual machine. And it's running on Windows, not Linux. So that's kind of cool. Let's just do $hostname. Host name to prove that we are, whoops, host name, to prove that we are actually on that machine. And if we do an IP config, you can see I've got the local IP address of the computer that I'm remote controlling. So that can be kind of useful. In fact, that can be very, very useful, especially the fact that all you actually have to do is run a command like this. Just go and extract that, and you could run that on your local machine, which means that if you knew the names of all your virtual machines, you could very easily combine this with a key file and go and use SSH to make scripts remote control a whole bunch of different computers. But coming back to the original point of this video, let's just double check one more thing. If we go into licenses and Windows Server, we can see that this is a pay-as-you-go licensed server. Now, if I delete this virtual machine that I'm on at the moment, this VM Demos Azure ARC will actually still exist. So if you do actually want to tear this down and not be billed for your Windows Server after you've deleted this virtual machine, because if you delete the VM, the ARC connection will still stay there inside Azure. So we need to first of all go inside here and make sure that we delete this ARC connection first. And once we've deleted this ARC connection in Azure, what we can do is we can shut down this virtual machine. And come back into Hyper-V. In fact, you know what? Yep, there we go. And let's go and delete that virtual machine. So once it's turned off, I should be able to delete it. And that's going to delete the VM. Okay, so that was a quick demo for installing Windows Server 2025 and connecting it with pay-as-you-go licensing via using Azure ARC in a new method. We also took a look at actually being able to SSH to our Windows Server boxes directly from the Azure portal, which I think is really, really cool and could kind of save us a lot of time in the future. And then we can use PowerShell from within that SSH tunnel afterwards. So I hope you enjoyed this quick demo, and you'll join me next time for more Windows content, Azure content, and PowerShell content. See ya! And you know the routine, hashtag like and subscribe, and I hope you enjoyed this video and will join me next time. Goodbye.